All right, so moving on to the final segment, I'll be sharing my UFC 309 preview. So during the weekend, Dana White announced the UFC 309 card, the card that will be heading over to New York when the UFC makes their return back to Madison Square Garden, where UFC 309 will take place at Madison Square Garden. And in the main event, you will see Jon Jones defend his heavyweight championship against Stipe, a fight that we should have got last year. And then in the co-main event, you'll see Charles Oliveira take on Michael Chandler in a rematch that we've seen at the lightweight division unfold a few years ago in the UFC. So I'll be covering my thoughts on those two fights being announced. Let's go into the Jon Jones versus Stipe fight. Now, if you guys remember last year, Jon Jones versus Stipe was supposed to take place and be the main event at UFC 295, but unfortunately it didn't happen because Jon Jones tore his pec, and Jon Jones has been missing from the UFC for the last 20 months now. And instead, for UFC 295, that was the first time where we saw Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka step up to the plate and replace those two respective heavyweights. But this will be Jon Jones' first fight in 20 months. That's a long time being away from the octagon, a year and a half. And this should be a fun fight between himself and between Jon Jones and Stipe. I think win, lose, or draw, Stipe, this will be his final fight against Jon Jones because he is 42 years of age, and you're fighting in the main event of UFC 309 against the all-time great, the greatest of all time, and Jon Jones, as Dana White would say, and give him a lot of credit for. But as I digress, I think Stipe is going to be done after this fight. I just think this will be a good fight, but I think this should have been Tom Aspinall's moment. Tom Aspinall has been the interim heavyweight champion since UFC 295, where he won the interim heavyweight title. He's been holding it ever since, and he's been waiting for Jon Jones ever since. So even though Dana White and the rest of the UFC executives really wanted this Jon Jones and Stipe fight, it really should have been Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall that really should have happened in the main event of UFC 309 at Madison Square Garden. Just telling facts here, because Tom Aspinall has deserved it. But moving on to the next fight that was announced is the Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler fight. Now, these two respective fighters fought each other back at UFC 292 back in 2021, where it was Charles Oliveira who knocked out Michael Chandler in the second round years ago. So we've seen this fight translate and transpire, I should say, and take place in the lightweight division. Now, this has potential to be better than the first fight than what we saw of Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. It could be more competitive, but with these fighters jockeying for position to be in line for a lightweight title fight, possibly fighting the winner of Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan whenever those two respective fighters eventually fight each other, I think the winner could be next in line to fight one of those respective fighters next. And Michael Chandler here is going into a have everything to gain but nothing to lose opportunity, because he's been preparing himself for so long to fight Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is playing hooky at bars, still drinking, not taking his career seriously. So Dana White has basically cut him off, ruled him out for him fighting this year. And Michael Chandler now has a different opportunity to present himself, because if he can beat Charles Oliveira, he could possibly become a #1 contender, be next in line for a lightweight title opportunity, or still have that big money fight against Conor McGregor and still have your biggest payday of your career in line to fight Conor McGregor at some point in 2025. So Michael Chandler is sitting in a pretty good position if he could beat Charles Oliveira in the co-main event of UFC 309. I think Charles Oliveira is hungry. I think that loss against Arman Tsarukyan at UFC 300 is going to fire him up. And Michael Chandler has been fired up as well, being in countless training camps just to fight nobody. So I think that's going to be a really fun fight. And that fight really could steal the show if both respective fighters bring their A game. It could be better than the first fight that we've seen between them in 2021. So those are my thoughts on the UFC 309 card being announced. That is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.